We all know that the right habits and mindsets can be transformational in how we live our lives. But among the sea of advice online, it can be challenging to know who to trust with these important life decisions. At The Standard, we answer those questions and introduce you to some of the most successful people in the world in their fields and the habits and the mindsets they've used to achieve their success. To learn more about our social platform, head on over to www.thestandardapp.com. And now, your host, myself, Chris Pelletroni. Well, welcome to another episode of The Standard. I am your host, Chris Pelletroni, and today's guest is Randy Spelling. He is a professional holistic life coach. He is a book author. He is a speaker. He is the host of the podcast, The Oldish. And this was a really fun conversation. I met Randy, I think it was about February or March of last year. He was kind enough, like a lot of the other guests, to contribute a few habits to the platform. That's how I got to know him. And I think we just hit it off. I really liked him. I like a lot of the content that he shares. He's fairly vulnerable about his personal experiences. And he obviously works with a lot of clients, so is able to provide a lot of insight as to what he sees being some of the issues that people struggle with, and also some of the ways he's helped empower people's lives. And this is somebody that just really wants to make a difference. And listening and doing a lot of research on him, he just wants to find a way to make an impact, a positive impact, and help people live the best, most meaningful life that they can. And so in this particular episode, we cover a lot of different topics. And so as with other coaches, I tend to lean into that a little bit and really try to tease out some of their experience as being a professional coach and the challenges that they see and the things that they're doing to help their clientele. But then we pivot over into his best habit and lean into exercise and why that is the habit and how that supports his mental health and his overall well-being. And then from there, we lean into mindset. And this was a new one for this. We haven't talked a lot about purpose, but he shares a little bit about the way that he thinks about his purpose, how he found it. I think we jam out on that for a good 10, 15 minutes, and how purpose helps sort of drive his priorities as both a husband, a father, an entrepreneur, a coach, and so forth. And then we exit with sort of his wish for the world. You know, how would he attempt to nudge humanity in a more loving and kind direction? And so I really resonated with his answer there as well. So as you'll hear in this episode, this is just a really good human being that has a tremendous amount of wisdom to share. And so without further ado, I want to welcome Randy Spelling. Let's dive into it. You know, I feel like, it's so interesting. When I first met you, confession here, I actually did not know anything about your background. And that was like so irrelevant to why I reached out to you. I reached out to you because of what you were putting on social media, because of the fact that you would provide some vulnerability into yourself, and you were talking about habits and mindsets. And there was just from my perspective, a natural connection of like, dude, this guy gets it. I don't think it was until I actually spoke to you that I'm like, oh, okay, I understand a little bit of your background. So I found that interesting. And then in preparation for this, I really dug more into your life coaching, and I listened to a number of your podcasts, and I wanted to get a better sense of who you are and why you do what you do. So I feel like I'm prepared for this, but I recognize a lot of the listeners may not know you, or more specifically, what you've been doing since you moved to Portland, and this mindset life coach, and like how you sort of define your coaching. So I'd love you to take a couple of minutes and share what you feel comfortable sharing, but sort of segue us into who is Randy?
Sure. Who's Randy in 2.5 minutes? Go.
As long as you want.
So I'll just do a brief overview. I grew up in Los Angeles. It came from a Hollywood family. My father was a television producer named Aaron Spelling. My sister, an actress named Tori Spelling. And I was just trying to find my way, right? Where is my place in the family, in this world? What am I going to do? And I think it was always assumed that I would just go into the business because it's very sort of incestual in that way, in the entertainment business. It's like doors are open and you just kind of walk through some of those doors, hopefully. And I wasn't sure that I wanted to do that. I was more reserved and shy. I didn't really want to be in front of the camera. And at around 15, that changed when I watched, I shared this story a couple times before, but my dad didn't fly at all, Chris. So we would take family vacations to Las Vegas, a place where he could drive. And so we would have these 2-week vacations in Las Vegas. And we were walking through Caesar's Palace. There were these, I think they're still there, the shops at Caesar's Palace that had all been redone. And as we were walking, Beverly Hills 90210, a television show in the 90s that was really, really popular, was at its height. And we were walking through, and my father and my sister started getting mobbed. I mean, literally 300-400 people. Security had to come. But something stood out to me with this interaction, because I would watch this places that we went, but for some reason, right place, right time, right thought, I watched people who otherwise would just pass by each other, never say a word, all of a sudden have this reaction, and they would get flushed and they would get excited and they would give my father and my sister a hug. And, both my father and my sister were very gracious and kind. And I would watch these people walk away because I'm on the sidelines watching it all. I'd watch them walk away feeling different. I didn't language this at the time. I didn't have the right context, but it was a feeling. I could watch them and something changed, right? Maybe it made their day better, or they would keep that memory with them. And in retrospect, I saw why I was attracted to that. Now, knowing myself better, then I went to my parents that night and I said, I think I want to be an actor. What I realized was I wanted to have that effect on people. I didn't know any other way possible to have that impact. So that was my vehicle. That was the mechanism. So I went down the path of acting, and I really enjoyed it. The years that I acted, I really enjoyed it. I feel like it was incredible preparation for what I do now, because I get to act out things for people all the time. I can be animated. I can play the part and sort of channel a person that they're talking about or what they need to see so they could see it outside of themselves. So it was all purposeful, but I was still trying to find my place and find how I mattered. And truthfully, I was trying to heal a lot of things inside that I was trying to reconcile with my childhood. And so the line just kept moving for me. I acted and I thought, okay, this is the way. And then I still felt that not enoughness, that insecurity and lack of purpose. So then someone said, well, you have to do feature films. At that point, feature films were all the rage. You're not really an actor if you're a television actor. So I segued into feature films and did one of my first films with Dennis Hopper. The whole funny story about that and someone pulling the fire alarm, but I can say that. And then I thought, okay, here I am doing feature films. I don't feel any different. So I segued into music. I loved music at the time, and I thought I can reach people by putting out positive, conscious type music where that could change and have an impact in a big way. And I did that, and I had my first office, and me and my partner, put our legs up on the desk, and I thought I have my own office. I have, the poster of our company, and we signed a deal with a label to be, sort of a smaller label, subsidiary on their label, and nothing changed for me. So at that point, I didn't know what else to do. I just started filling myself with substances, and I went down the road of addiction. It got a hold of me pretty good. I should not be here right now. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, there were a handful of times where my heart stopped beating. I wound up in an ambulance, passed out with, a fire truck and people over me. And this is one of 100 times, maybe. My friends all thought for sure one day I would be dead. and something changed. And I got clean, but that was just the point of removing the distractions in my life to where then I could go on this healing journey and fill all the holes and the voids that I was trying to fill, get some real healing. And then I got to ask myself the question, I have this second chance. What do I want to do with this? Do I want to stay in entertainment? Is it really fulfilling me in the ways that I want? Or do I want to do something different? And I discovered life coaching. I enrolled in I think it was about a year and a half uh, certification course. And it was suggested to coach as many people as possible. So I did just that. And through working with people and coaching people, and I was young, I was 27 years old. I'd have to grow my beard. So people took me a little bit more seriously, thinking, they're not going to take me seriously. I'm so young. What do I know about problems that people are going through? But I stayed with it, built a practice. And then through the years have expanded out into group work, different programs. And, the biggest through line for me from coaching people for 16 years now has been this great equalizer and humbler that every single day I get to hear where people want to improve. I get to hear their stories of how they have seen themselves, thought about themselves, how other people have seen them, and how they break that narrative and how they rewrite that narrative. And the one thing I can say is that we all go through struggle. It doesn't have to be so bad. It doesn't matter if one person's problems are different than another. At the end of the day, we all want to live the best life possible. And so I feel like my job and my purpose is to partner with people to help them to live their best lives, whatever that is. If it's financial success, if it's business success, if it's personal success, I think they're all related. If it's more successful communication in relationships, how to be present, how to actually enjoy life and take in the moment, all those things are how I work with people.
I love that. I mean, I was familiar with your story to some extent, but I appreciate the additional clarity. I'm curious, and we'll focus on you for the vast majority of this, but since you are a coach, what has surprised you the most about coaching all these people over these years? Um, I mean, I think I find it so fascinating that, and I talk to, at least in this particular season, coaches that are incredibly successful all over the world. And
Mhm.
to your point you made a minute ago, it's like, you didn't say it quite this way, but my wife would appreciate this. It's like, we're all a hot wreck in some ways. Like, it's just, I'm always amazed at, like, no matter how much wealth or love or whatnot we think somebody else has, we're obviously all very preoccupied with ourselves in a lot of ways, and there's just a lot of
Mhm.
insecurity, for whatever reason. And I always find that so fascinating that no matter how successful we think somebody is, when you really start to peel back those layers, if you can get to that raw, authentic, vulnerable them, we're all so alike. And so I'm so curious.
So alike.
You've been doing this for over a decade. You've probably worked with hundreds, if not thousands, of people. Um, yeah, what has surprised you the most about working with people and trying to make a meaningful impact on their life?
What surprises me the most is how similar we all are. I now have coached people from every different socioeconomic background. I have worked with uber successful, high achievers. I've worked with students. I've worked with people who have very little. There are small differences in personality, right? Someone who has $1 billion or millions looks at the world a little bit differently, generally speaking, than someone who is living paycheck to paycheck. So there are differences in that way. But I can tell you that insecurities, the way that they wake up, the way that they go to bed, how they view life, if they're any more fulfilled, it doesn't matter. And I think this is one of the most important points in the day and age of social media, where we're watching everybody. The golden age where years and years ago, maybe you'd see a celebrity on the news, or, there'd be something in the paper and you'd read about it. But that was slow media. Maybe it was black and white, then it was color, you'd read. It's very different than watching video and snapshots of people's lives, because it's not just about what they are posting. It's about how we interpret what they are posting. And our interpretation of that, so much of the time, is this comparison, usually less than versus equal to.
Yeah.
And that equation is an equation that usually makes people spiral downward in ways that they don't even realize. So, quick snapshot. You look at that person, you go, oh my gosh, they took a private jet. What would it be like to take a private plane? God, I don't have that. I'm never going to get there. In fact, I can't even, I dream about first class. Heck, I'll take business class. What would it be like to even be able to afford business class? And then what's happening is, instead of someone going, I'm going to take the actions necessary to get to a place where I can take business class flights. I know that that's possible for me. I'm going to actually research all the ways in which that person that I'm looking at did this. How did they build? What was the mindset that they had? What were the habits that they garnered through the years? But that's not happening. For a lot of people, not everyone, but for a lot of people, it is the realization that their life is different than mine. It must be easier for them. It's so hard for me. And then they keep themselves shut down and defeated and not moving forward. And I think that's a dangerous place to be, because it's not working. In fact, it's having the opposite effect. It has detrimental effects.
Yeah. I think I think the Surgeon General put it out earlier this year that um, loneliness is an epidemic. And I think there's been plenty of stats. I'll probably get them a little bit wrong, but I want to say something like a third of adults don't have friends, or something in that nature. It's just some like ungodly number. And I don't know. I think I look at loneliness in a slightly different way. Of sure, maybe there's a lack of friends or component, but it's a little bit of what you're saying with social media. Is like, I think so many people feel like they're alone with their problems and that they're very unique to
Yes.
them, whatever that may be. And I think so much of the beauty of at least what I'm trying to create at the standard is, I don't know what it's like to have substance abuse problems. That wasn't my journey. But I know there's people out there that was their journey. And I know that the way they'll talk about it would cut straight to the heart, that would really resonate with somebody who is struggling with that. Or,
Mm-hmm.
and we could pick any topic: racism, domestic violence, somebody that's dealing with obesity. Is the point is like, no one human can encompass all of these different issues. But I think if we could find a way to focus on and sharing some of our personal experience with what we have gone through, I think what it would do is it would start to bridge that gap of loneliness, to show, the person struggling with whatever issue, that there are millions of human. I mean, there's 8 billion of us on this planet. There are millions of people who have probably gone through a situation or an experience pretty darn close to what you're going through. And not that that solves everybody's problem, but what I do think it does do is it helps them realize, I'm not alone. And I do feel like the loneliness of, this is so unique to me, it really hurts people. I mean, I know I've got family that fit that boat as well. And so I don't know. I get so confused with social media and the world. I just, for a lot of, this might be a tangent here, but I feel like we just over index on a lot of the wrong things. And I know you work with entrepreneurs, but for me, and maybe it was just the way I was growing up, like I was always taught success is to some extent, your money and your title, and it's the car, it's the house, and it's hard to like rewire that. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, my God, it's like none of those things. Like it's
Right.
my relationship to my two boys. It's the and I this was what I was thinking earlier when you were talking about life coach. It's the effect you have on other people. That's wealth, right? It's your health. It's the things you do to take care of yourself, all that other stuff, we don't get to keep any of it. Like,
Right.
and so I don't know. I think in a lot of ways we make life harder for each other by indexing on the wrong things in life, and we don't talk about, well, how's your health? How happy are you? Are you following your
Hmm.
dreams? Are you following your passion? We tend to focus more on, you don't have a nicer car, or whatever it may be. So I don't know. I just think we need to rewire the way we think collectively.
I'm with you. I think a very noble goal would be, in the next 10 years, if we could redefine what success means.
Mhm.
And look, it, your definition doesn't have to fit the definition. For some people, they are driven by money and materialism and things. And you know what? Okay.
Yeah.
That I'm not here to say that that's wrong, because someone may have had a dream as a little kid, they didn't have something, and the symbol that they got burned into their mind is a certain type of house or a vacation or a lifestyle. And look, if that's something that they need to do for themselves, that's okay. I'm not here to quash anyone's dream or goal. What I would say is, you can have that if you really want that, as long as the expectation is realistic that that goal isn't going to bring you the inner happiness that you're looking for. It will bring you achievement. It will bring you to the line of gratification and saying, I made it. But I was just talking to someone the other day who's getting a giant promotion. This is something that they have worked for their entire lives. Started very low in the company, pretty much the lowest, and maybe moving into, president role.
Mhm.
And so I wasn't talking to them, I was talking to someone about them. And, we were sharing stories. And what I was saying is, someone like that, if they are reticent, oh, should I do this? Should I not do this? What does that mean? A lot of times, what that shows is it is scary to bump up against the dream that you've been having and holding for so, so long. Because then what? What happens when you get the car or the house or you sell the company? There's life after that. And then you have to sort of reorganize yourself and recalibrate and say, what now? Where do I find and derive meaning in my life that's really going to matter? Because I have the things, and yet I still have to worry about my health. I'm still going to die at some point. I still have a family. I mean, there are all these things. It's like life still goes on. What do I do after that?
Yeah. It's there's so many interesting quotes that you can go. I mean, this pops up a lot in conversations I have with coaches, is, it's enjoying the journey, right? It's the experiences, not the outcomes. Because those are milestones, and maybe your milestone, or maybe your 15 seconds of fame, maybe it lasts a day, a week, a month, but to your point, it will pass, and then you have to sort of reconcile with, who are you, your identity, what makes you happy, and all that. And I find that stuff
Right.
so fascinating. I'm a true believer that if you really could get all human beings to be honest, even the ones that are chasing fame and fortune and titles or whatnot, I still believe if there was honesty in their reflection, nobody's saying, I hope I die, with my beach house, my Bentley, my gold bars. Like, it's always,
Right.
I mean, if you've ever, and maybe you've done this, I always find it so interesting to listen to people on their deathbed, and not in a morbid way, but just in a, like, my God, could we pull some life lesson forward? And there's been plenty of studies on how people think at the very end of their life, and it's usually time they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to get. It's
Mm-hmm.
an impact on somebody. It's rarely an extra day in the office, or, you know what I mean? It's always stuff that we
Right.
all can relate to. And I always want to, I don't know, see if I can steal that lesson and apply it to my life now, so that you can make the most of it. Um, let's pivot into you. You've been kind enough to share a few of your habits with us on the standard. I've watched them all several different times. So I'm so curious to see where you're at today. But the format of this is really to take a deeper dive into like a habit that serves you well, and then a deeper
Hmm.
dive into a mindset that serves you well. And so, for you at this stage of your life, is there a particular habit that you feel is contributing the most to your mental health, your well being, your overall success?
Yeah. Gosh, I would say first and foremost, in the last 6 months, I've really doubled down on exercise, and not exercise because I have a physical goal necessarily that I want to hit. Like, I'm not trying to lose weight or get in shape for a marathon. I do it because of the mental, emotional, even spiritual benefit that I get. And here's what I mean by that is clearly physically I feel better. I just do. I have more energy. Um but that energy permeates into being more alert, more aware for the clients that I coach. My mind is clearer. Like all the fogginess, the cobwebs kind of go
Mm,
away. It also depresses my central nervous system enough to where I handle stress differently. I'm able to regulate stress levels more, not perfectly, but more when I do a harder workout because my whole body is more calm. My mind is calm, my body's more calm. How this helps spiritually is if I don't do this, if I don't work out to sort of keep the body more calm, it's very hard for me to meditate or to get into more of a self reflective state because A, my body has energy in it. And as you know, I'm sure, and I'm sure listeners feel this too, when your body's revving, it's very hard to calm down and go, okay, just breathe and let everything go, much less the mind. If your mind is spinning and you're ruminating about things and you keep thinking about things over and over and your synapses are firing, it's almost impossible to sit and still yourself. So it has an impact in every area. And I think it's something, look, it's free. The benefit can't be overstated. And, I think it's something that we all have access to that doesn't require months of inner work and self help. So for me, that habit is imperative.
So, share a little bit more. Like, so with your exercise, let's try to get a little bit in the weeds here. Is this a
Hmm.
daily thing, a certain time of
Hmm.
day, a certain type of exercise? Like, what does that look like for you?
Sure. So I have worked out for years, at least 10 to 15 minutes a day. That was my quota. If that's all I could do, I would use it as a stimulant. So essentially, that sounds so bad. Like my addictive behavior is coming out, but I would actually use it to wake up.
Mhm.
So if I didn't work out in the morning, because I do breakfast with both my daughters, I wake up early, I make them breakfast, I drive them to school. If I wake up and I don't do any form of exercise at all, I just feel slow and sluggish. My brain feels like it's trying to catch up, and I don't like that feeling. Again, I like to be sharp and alert. So I actually do it just to oxygenate my body and get my blood flowing. I either do that or a form of breath work. And that helps to, again, get my blood flowing and make me feel awake and alive. So if that's all I can do, I will do that. For like today, I wasn't able to do my workout. So I did 4 minutes. That's all I had. I did 4 minutes, but it was enough to feel better. And my mark is, do I feel better? I don't have to feel the best I've ever felt today because that's unrealistic. But do I feel better? Did it make a difference? It's all I'm looking for. And I think that ethos, that concept can be applied in all areas of your life that you want to make a change in. Like, let's say it's a relationship with a significant other. Did I communicate just a little bit better today? Did I do one step in the right direction? You put one day after another of one small step in the right direction, and before you know it, you've made a lot of headway.
I love that. That comes up a lot in this podcast. Abby DeGraff was a good friend she's a fitness trainer out of Madison, Wisconsin, and it's progress over perfection, and and I think for people that are living that type of life, we get it. It's compound interest. It does pay. For people that aren't already there, they'd probably look, really, Randy, 4 minutes? Like, why bother? It's 4 minutes. But I totally agree with you. It's just a little, and it sounds like some of the subtleties of the way that you said that is there's some self-compassion that you have. There's a lot of non-judgmentalness because, I mean, let's face it, you probably have a mentality, or I would imagine here, I'm speculating, that there's probably some perfectionism in you as well of like, you want to nail it.
Definitely.
So to not always nail it, I mean, let's be honest, that's a huge accomplishment. I know I struggle with that. So it's breath work sometimes. Maybe it's stretching. For you, is there like a set?
Yeah, like
stuff that
what things do I do?
Yeah,
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, what are you doing for exercise?
So I again, my sort of 12-minute workouts were at home. I would do push-ups, sit-ups. I would just keep moving. Like, I'd set the timer and just move. I'd jump some rope. I would work myself to a point where I'm huffing and puffing, and I've worked my body. So for me, strength training is really important. If I just, cardio's great and I like the feeling that I get from cardio, but for me, I need to lift, pull, push against. I need that physical feeling of getting energy out of my body. It's the best way I could describe it. I've also given this exercise to hundreds of people who are like, I'm in an office and I can't work out. I said, look, take 2 minutes in between your Zoom meetings or your call. Go to the wall if you can't get down on the ground and push against the wall. Do push-ups against the wall. Tire your muscles out a little bit because that fatigue will actually make you relax. So I do that. But in the last 6 months, I have really upped the game. There's a gym in my neighborhood, so I go to the gym and I will do a lot of different strength training, from dumbbells to barbells to pulling a sled to getting a ball and picking it up and slamming it on the ground. It's one of my favorite ones, especially if you have some emotions to get out. Oh my gosh, it's a great one.
Oh, that's awesome. How long have you, I guess, had the habit of exercising? Like, has that always been a part of Randy, or is that like, when did this become a more regimented part of who you are and what you do?
So I have worked out on and off since I was about 14 years old. However, it really changed for me at the beginning of COVID because we moved a week before everything shut down. So we were in a new house, everything shut down. And I was like, oh, this is, my client load decreased for a couple months because everyone panicked. It was like, I need to be with my kids. I have no time for self. I can't do anything. And I was like, hey, I'm just going to go play with my kids. I don't know what's happening in the world, but I'm going to keep them, safe and calm. And so we were playing games and I was eating things that I don't normally eat. We stocked up on loaves of bread. I'm not a big bread guy. I just don't feel good eating it. But we were making sandwiches and I have a flat top, so I'm grilling stuff and making stir fries. And I just started feeling crappier and crappier from the foods that I was eating that I wasn't used to eating. And I wasn't working out. I was playing, but I was still rather sedentary. And I got to the point where I probably gained about 7 pounds, which for my frame is a lot. And I didn't feel good. And Chris, I remember I was in my closet one night. I walked into the closet and it hit me. And I just said, enough. Tomorrow, it was a Sunday. Tomorrow, I am working out for 40 minutes. And it was some app I got on, and I did these 40-minute workouts. And something after that very first 40-minute workout, it was hard, it was grueling, but a light bulb went off in my head. I went after that workout, went into the house. I was singing, I was laughing, I was way more calm. My mood was elevated. And I thought, I know what feeling really crappy feels like because I've been feeling that. Now I know what feeling really good feels like. There's no way that I'm not doing this. So I had the realization, the experiential realization, this is it. I'm not going to ignore this. And look, through the years, I've done a lot of study. I've seen and read a lot of studies and research showing the benefits of exercise. I mean, by now we all sort of know this, but it particularly struck me when it relates to depression and anxiety, and how so much of the time it says that exercise was shown to be as effective, if not more, than therapy and medication. Now, I'm not saying this is a replacement for that,
No.
but if you have a modality that is as effective as, why wouldn't we all be doing this?
Oh yeah, you're preaching over here. So before I started the standard, I was not like, I was in a whole different industry. I mean, I have good habits and whatnot, but by no means an expertise. So probably maybe the way you felt, I listened to a podcast to how you felt when you first started coaching of, you know, who's gonna take me serious? I'm not an expert. I felt very much the same way, and to some extent too. So I read like 200 books. Like I just went into the rabbit hole. I was like trying to every self help book I could get, from habits to grit to, I mean, pick 'em, lots of different stuff in
Yeah.
there. And then I totally geeked out and did a mind map where I took notes on all these books. I had thousands of pages of notes and thousands of these little cue cards I would print out, and just trying to make sense of like, what's the least amount of information that a human has to know to live a good life? Because as you well know, most people, one, I don't think they're going to read a book, let alone hundreds of books. Like they want the easy button, right? What's the default? How do
Mm-hmm.
I click the easy button? So I was looking for the easy button. Like if I could, what's the one thing I got to tell you, Randy, that's just going to have a paradigm shift and you live an amazing life. So
Yeah.
anyways,
Yeah.
I did all this research. I built this mind map, and I basically distilled down all this knowledge to like 10 building blocks of like, and it's a lot. If you get these, like you got it. And then even since then, there's three non-negotiables that I found in all my research, and one of them is exercise, movement, nutrition, and sleep. And it's not to say there's
Mm-hmm.
not others, but if you can nail those three, it's an ecosystem. They're going to have such ripple effects through one another. And so
Mm-hmm.
exercise is so huge. I recently did a series of posts on natural medicine. And the way that I was looking at that is, to your point, you said exercise is free. So is sunlight, and so is greenery, and so is
Yep.
birdsong and water and being outdoors. And I was trying to look for all of these things that I love when I'm out there running, of like, nature is providing us all of these phenomenal ways to cope with stress and depression and anxiety and mental clarity. I mean, I know you get good ideas when you're out in nature, as does every human being, for all the reasons that nature brings novelty. So, point being
Yes.
is like, there's just all of this stuff that's just at our fingertips. And I think what I love the most about what you said is it didn't sound like it was purely physical. That was the jump off for you getting an exercise. Sure, there was those 6 pounds on your frame, but it sounds like there was a little bit more self-reflection or awareness of how the lack of exercise made you feel and how you felt post-exercise. And it just
Yeah.
reminds me of like, you got to choose your heart in life. Like, you may like exercise. Most people that don't do it would say they don't like exercise, but I got to imagine they also don't like brain fog and don't like feeling shitty every day.
That's the thing. I'm not a natural exerciser. There are some people who just want to get out and they'll go on 20-mile hikes and they'll go on runs like
Yeah.
that. That is their thing. Exercise doesn't come natural to me, but it is that thing. It's knowing if you either are going to feel crappier, slower, sluggish, more brain fog, or you're going to feel alive, more grateful, calm, centered. I know that exercise is a way to get to how I want to feel. So for me, at this point, I know very clearly what I don't want to feel like. So it's very clear what I need to do to keep myself optimized. And I really, Chris, I think, you hear people say this all the time, like attention is the biggest currency these days and everyone's vying for attention. I think there's truth in that. But I also think that our energy, and take that for what you want. There's many ways of looking at energy, but our energy is our biggest asset that we have. Now, attention goes into that because if our attention goes in the wrong places, our energy
Mhm.
drops. But energy, when one is feeling electric, alive, grateful. You can see it on someone. It's almost like you can see their energy field, their aura. There's something in their eyes. They're glowing. They're exuding this magnetism, right?
Mhm.
And I think to me, exercise, eating, where you place your attention, and making sure, like you talked about nature, getting off of a screen and going out in nature almost always drops someone's anxiety a considerable percentage. Now, it might not take it away because you're not dealing with the underlying problem or the thoughts that are leading to cause the anxiety, but momentarily,
Yeah.
if you want to pause, you want to feel better, immediately change your environment, get up from where you're at, go into nature, start looking at trees and birds and the life all around you. And it does attune you to something different, a different frequency, a different radio
Yeah.
station. And that station is going to be more life giving. And that's energy. I think that's our biggest commodity that we have these days.
Yeah. And I do think with small baby steps, I know for me, exercise is my mental health, and the runs that I go on are less about the physical component, and it's more about sorting life. And I've gotten to a place
Mm.
where I use those runs to bring more awareness to how I feel, to ask myself some of those tough questions. So to your point, yeah, nature itself may not remove your anxiety and depression completely. It will help out, but I do think over time, if you choose to lean into some of these things, and maybe it's not, a run, maybe it's a walk, maybe it's something different. But I do think it provides for a lot of people alone time, brings a sense of awe. And I think you can start to layer in, I know it took me years to get there, you can start to layer in a component of self reflection. And you can start to ask yourself some of those really tough questions, which I would prefer to do in nature than sitting at my desk here writing in a journal. So I think over time you can really start to get to the core of some of these issues. I honestly just believe exercise is the answer to everything. So I think the big thing, and I think I mentioned this on one of the last podcasts because movement was their top habit as well, is just find something you like. Like, I think that's the real big key. If it's breath work, if it's yoga, if it's playing frisbee with your child, if it's mountain climbing, if it's mountain biking, if it's swimming, I mean, there's just so much to do. Just find something. And if you really struggle with your something, then I would say do what you've done. And is how do you feel not doing it? And then just recognize you can eliminate a lot of those feelings by doing it. You just got to choose which of those hards do you want to go through. So I love that. Let's pivot over to mindset. And so, in a similar way, is there a particular mindset for you right now that contributes the most to your mental health, your well being, your success?
Mm. I think the biggest mindset framework that works for me, it might not work for everyone, But for me personally, it's knowing my purpose. And look, I think purpose can change and unfold through life, but there's sort of like a mission. Like what's the mission here while you're here? And I feel pretty confident and clear about my mission. And if I keep that front and center, it keeps me balanced, because there's things that come up from day to day, right? There's waves in the ocean, but that's my life raft. That's my dinghy. That's what gets me over the waves, is staying true to what my mission is. It sort of clears away all of the distraction very quickly.
So how does knowing your mission do that? Like, is it like help you get out of the bed in the morning? Like, does it help you make sense of challenging moments? Like, how does knowing your purpose and your mission, like, how is that helping you on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think it creates a through line, right? Because for me, my mind is very active. So many things that I'm doing in my business and different projects. Uh, I'm also still I'm coaching people, and a fair amount of them. So I'm thinking about them. I'm contemplating them. What do they need? What do I need to do? So holding all of that takes a lot of capacity, and I think at times there might be a tendency for me, when there's other stressors, like my coaching clients don't ever stress me out. But when it comes to like, oh, now I have a ton of other things on my plate, and I'm like, wow, my plate is full. And I get into this like, what? There's no time. I have no time to do anything, right? And when you're bumping up against time, and it's like, my child has to get out the door, and I have no time, and I'm going to be late for this and that. Like, it can get kind of crazy. But holding steadfast to, what does this have to do with the reason why I'm here? If I am late, does it make a huge difference? And it allows me to let go of the things that I'm holding on to too tightly, right? Let's say a huge unexpected bill comes, and you get that constriction of like, whoa, I didn't account for this. Oh my gosh, this just hit me upside the head. Again, what's my mission here, right? Something changes in my business, and I go, oh my gosh, this is happening, or I'm going to lose this, or, you get into that spiral. It's like, but wait a second, let me come back to center. Why am I here? I'm here to make a difference. I'm here to make an impact. If I can't see the 5-year plan, let me go to the 5-hour plan. What is my impact going to be in the next 5 hours? What's meaningful? For me, in the next 5 hours, it's the clients that are in front of me on the computer or on the phone. After that, it's my kids until they go to bed. And if I can go micro and really focus on what's in front of me and what's important, a lot of the noise seems to fall away.
Yeah, as you were saying that, I couldn't help but think purpose helps shape priorities in a lot of ways.
Helps shape priorities, yes.
Yeah, I really like that. I guess a couple questions I would have on that is, how'd you
Mm-hmm.
find your purpose? And I know there's podcasts out there. I remember listening to one, Jay Shetty, a while back. I mean, I think Brendan Bouchard. I've listened to that, but I totally agree with you. I know how I did it, and it was crazy. But I'm so curious. How did you find your purpose?
I don't know if I found my purpose or my purpose found me, and I allowed it to happen and paid attention to it. I can tell you this. At one point, I was frenetic about, what is my purpose? Why am I here? Because I really wanted to matter. And I'm sure this goes back to childhood, right? It was
Yeah.
like that one thing, like, I want to be special. I want to make a difference. And, I'm not making as much of a difference as I want. And I'm trying to grow my business, and I need it now. And I'm impatient. And I wrote this in my book back in 2014. Funny enough, you know how this goes. I had all these people who were reaching out to me. Could you help me find my purpose? I just don't know what my purpose is. And I was like, okay, I understand what's happening here. Something amazing happened is, I didn't have the answers for myself. especially when I was in it. But when things were being brought to me and I had someone else in front of me, now you understand when someone's in front of me and I don't know exactly what the answer is, I can do one of two things. I can ask them questions and follow the lead until we get to some sort of solution, or I can step aside and ask a bigger question of what needs to be asked. Could I please be guided here? Because I don't know the answer. I don't have a 3-step strategy to this. I'm still trying to figure it out. And something amazing and beautiful would happen, Chris, each and every time. I would intuitively be guided to a place in their life to ask them a question. It made no sense. It's like, what about when you were 6 years old and there was, a white horse that you saw on a ranch one day? I mean, it would make no sense. But I would say these things, or I would ask a question and I was like, what kind of question is coming out of my mouth? But I'd follow the lead enough and I'd kind of brace myself. And then they would go, I don't know. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. I remember that. Okay. There was this thing. And then it would snowball until little bits of information would present themselves and give them information for it to unfold, or for me to guide them in a way to where we can follow these pieces together. And I was blown away. But what I realized from this for myself is that they didn't get all the pieces of the puzzle right away. We were given together the pieces that they were needed in that moment for that day to go on the trail that they needed to go down to find what it is they needed to find. It might not have taken them all the way, but it took them far enough to make a decision about something, or to pivot or change their trajectory because they were clear on something. And that, to me, watching this unfold and going, I don't know what's happening here. I can't even take the credit for this, but something is guiding. There's an intelligence happening in this co-creation that is way beyond me. And I'm so humbled by it and so grateful for it. I think part of my purpose is to be able to trust this intelligence, trust the intuition that's coming, and let go of needing to know everything. And I can tell you over the years, it served me well, because when I think I know, a lot of times I don't know. When I can step back and go, what is it? I don't know. Let me be a blank slate and see what comes through. Pretty much it works every time.
Yeah, I remember listening to one of your podcast interviews, and you didn't describe it quite this way, but like one of your superpowers, you totally didn't use that word, by the way, is intuition, is leaning into that intuition. And it made me think while you were talking. I don't know if you've ever watched it. I love it. Steve Jobs did a commencement speech at Stanford a number of years back before he was diagnosed with cancer. And it's a beautiful speech. He had 3 points. And one of them, he told a story of how he went to college and he took calligraphy classes and he had no idea what the hell the purpose of all this was. And then he basically was like, later on in life that paid dividends, because as he was building Apple, he used that learning of typography to weave that into the design. And he basically said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. It's very challenging to do that.
Right.
You can start to connect them looking back. And it just, if you can embrace that, I think really the point that I'm trying to drive home is like, it's just trust. It's just taking a leap of faith. And I think when you want to find your purpose, if that is something that you aspire to do, I know for me, I couldn't find it the day I was trying to find it. that didn't happen quite that way. It was, it slowly unfolded over time. And, eventually, to your point, enough pieces were gathered that I could make sense of what I was holding. But it certainly didn't come when I had like Enya playing in my office and a candle burning and I'm laying down and I'm like, let's find it today. Let's meditate.
Right.
It totally.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing for so many people, is to take the pressure off.
Yeah.
In terms of finding your purpose. I think if you have this inner nudge to find it, that's a beautiful thing, because there's something deeper guiding you to look for this. So pay attention to that. And like you said, start to connect the dots. I shared this in my book, but something becomes very fascinating when you let go of the fact that everything happened the way that it happened, and you go, okay, how am I going to use this to connect the dots to create a picture? Let's see how they connect and what happens, and start to connect them. Why did that happen to get me to where I am? Why did I need that? Why was that important? How could that have helped me, even though it was one of the most painful things that I've ever gone through? What is something that emerged from it? And it doesn't mean that you're happy that you went through it. That might be a stretch. But what emerged from that? How did it change you, both good and bad, and see where you have wound up now to the place that you're in. And you can start connecting those dots. It gives you a set of data, information to use to go, how do I want to pull all of that forward? And what is this recipe based on all these components? How could I use all of this to create a new dish? Maybe you're already creating it partially.
Yeah.
Do you want to create in that way more? And I think purpose is something, I mean, you tell me, I'd love to hear from you how it unfolded for you. Purpose, when you are living more on purpose, in purpose, life feels more authentic. You feel that you're dropping in, that something just feels right. Doesn't mean that everything is going to feel right. It's not the problem solver for everything in your life, but you feel like you're in this groove, similar to when you play a record. When you're out of the groove, it's scratching. When you're in the groove, there's this slow static that's kind of buttery and calming. And then you hear this music, whatever music that is for you. And when that's happening, it just sounds right, like you're sinking into your soul somehow.
Yeah, I love it. I think this is I think this is the first time we've really honed in on purpose on this podcast, but I think it's such a worthy thing to look at. And I don't think everybody is trying to find their purpose, but to your point a minute ago, I think if you have the itch to figure it out, I think that's great. And I think you've got to
Mhm.
follow those little breadcrumbs to do it. Real briefly, for me personally, I think what I realized, and it was sort of at the conclusion of selling my first company, is like I didn't feel more successful. And I don't know that that's exactly what I was driving for. But when I sold it, I didn't feel more successful as a person. It was just another day, slightly bigger bank account. Yeah, we did some cool stuff. I knew I would start something new. And I think for me, Randy, where it really came in was I've got a great life. Like, sure, we've all had our adversity, but I haven't been dealt some of the adversity that so many other people on the planet have been dealt.
Mhm.
I jokingly say, like, I'm a privileged white guy from California. I mean, I was born in the 80s. You and I are not too far off from age. I just turned 43. Like, right place, right time. You know what I mean? There's so much of what I have that I felt like, sure, I've worked really hard and I don't want to dismiss the hard work, but I was put in just the right situation at the right time with the right parents and so forth, and that really incubated me into the man that I am today. And that in combination with my work ethic and whatnot. But my point is I don't have to worry about a glass of water. I don't have to worry about gas in my car. And
Right.
that coupled with the fact that I'm an empath. I'm very sensitive to humans and to animals and to just how people feel. There's so much of the world, and this is actually going to segue into my last question for you in a minute, that I just don't understand. Like I really don't get how we are in 2023 and 800 million people don't have water. Mind boggled at this point.
Right.
That
Right.
there is so much human migration and there's just so many problems out there. And so my
Yeah.
purpose is driven a little bit from the I don't have to worry. Sure, do I want certain things for my life? I do, but like, man, if all I did for the next 40, 50, I'm going to live to 100. So the next, 60-ish years of my life, if all I do is give back in whatever way I think I can,
Yeah.
dude, I'm
Sure.
stoked out of my life. I don't need any fancy car. I drive a Honda, I have a modest house, but like all my needs are met. And so
Mhm.
how do I try to use my intellect, my knowledge, my creativity to just maybe help develop that easy button for somebody else so that their life is a little easier. Um, that's sort of like the thought process behind like the purpose. And
Yeah.
I hope more people, whether it's energy, currency, whatever excess currency they have, that they do everything they can where applicable to give back and help, because there's more than enough on this planet. We just need people to do what they can where they can. So it's a little how I
I
think of it.
so agree with you. And I think a lot of people get discouraged saying, well, what could I do? It's that minimizing of self of what's one person. And if one person makes a difference and another person makes a difference, it's like light bulbs that come on, one light, two light, three lights. Oh, it's just one light bulb. You'd be surprised in a dark room when one light turns on, that that light is bright.
Yeah. Here's the cool thing about that. When you were saying that, I've got a good friend that lives in Orange County. And you know what she told me of her purpose, and I didn't understand it at the moment. You know, she just raises her 2 boys. She wasn't working at the time, and she's like, "Dude, if I go to the park and I'm playing with my kids, and there's another parent there, maybe a mom who's having a bad day, and I just take 20 to 30 minutes to talk with her, and
Mhm.
I start to turn her bad day into a better day." She's like, "That's my purpose." And at
Yep.
the moment, in the moment, to some extent, I'm like, well, I mean, like, okay, that's not very grand. But when I think about it, like, that's what we're all trying to do. We're all trying to help people in a moment that they need the help. And if we do that consistently on large scales, it's the ripple effect. One act of kindness influences 130, 150 people, and it just multiplies out. So when I hear that, I'm like, God, like you don't have to build a world-saving company or develop some product or
Right.
service. It might literally be you are there to just raise the best human being if you have a child, or maybe you're there to, be the shoulder for someone to cry on or the voice of reason. Like that is enough in a lot of cases.
Chris, you're so right. One of the things that I would tell people in this period of time when so many people were coming to me to discover more of their purpose was, what is your purpose today? Right? Like, how could you be purposeful today? Just focus on that, because purpose is something I feel that unfolds through a lifetime,
Hmm.
right? It really is. It's this unfurling process that you cannot just rush, but you can feel more purposeful. If you did something purposeful today, you will feel the result of that. You will feel better. This is what I see across the board. So bring the idea of purpose into a smaller scale
Yeah.
in a digestible way and make it about today. Quick story similar to your friend. I think it's beautiful what you shared, what she shared with you. I was in a grocery line the other day. And of course, I'm on a schedule. There's stuff that I need to do. I need to hurry home and unload these groceries. But this woman was having a tough time. She was saying that she needs a break because she feels shaky, and she, I don't know if she needed insulin or something, but there was some health problems that she was having. And I could tell she was just kind of a bit frantic and agitated. And I asked, she made a comment, the doctors didn't listen to me or something. And so I said, I'm so sorry that the doctors didn't listen to you. That must feel so frustrating. And she said, it's so frustrating. And she launched into the story, and we start working together in tandem. I'm unloading and she's, checking out, and we're both kind of bagging stuff. And she proceeds to tell me a lot of her story. And I'm just listening and following her thread. And I could tell her energy started changing. She started calming a little bit. And then she said, I forgot all of my reusable bags because I wasn't going to shop. I didn't plan on it. And she said, you know what? I'm gonna credit you all your bags. And I said, oh, let me put in my number. She said, I already got it for you. Don't worry. She said, you were so kind to listen to me. That's really rare. Thank you. It made a difference. And in that moment, we don't always get that immediate feedback, But I left, and it was just another validation of how important just being present and
Yeah.
connecting with people can make a huge difference in someone's life.
Yeah. Yeah, active listening and empathy. Although
Goes
it goes,
all the way. It
yeah,
makes a
I
difference.
honestly wish there was just like a forced high school, college course on just those topics, because God knows, as much as it may seem like common sense, it's not practiced incredibly well. All right, Randy, a final question I got for you here. So we focus so much
Yeah.
on this episode on you and sort of the individual in a lot of ways. But as we were talking about purpose and a broader perspective, um, this is an imaginary question, but if you could wave a wand and you could distill down some habit or mindset on all of humanity, so all 8 billion of us get this mindset or this habit, is there one in particular that you believe would nudge us as a society in a more loving and kind direction?
Yeah. I think it goes back to the age old golden rule: treat others the way that you want to be treated, and don't ever see yourself as separate from. I think that's one of the biggest places that human beings suffer, is we separate ourselves, whether that's from the world, whether it's a higher power, whether it's separating ourselves from other people and believing that we don't belong or feeling outcasts or not enough, not important enough or meaningful. Is don't separate yourself. I think when that happens, your mindset quickly changes to how you treat others. But if you're treating others that way, hopefully the golden rule would be treat yourself then the way that you would treat others and want to be treated.
I love that, honestly. It's very close to my wish for the world as well. Uh,
What is yours?
it's said in a slightly different way. It sort of touches on what we were talking about, is just providing a certain level of empathy beyond your line of sight, like learning to look at another human not as an individual that's separate from you, but very much like you. You know, and all the
Mm,
research I've done, if you distill down human values to some of their most basic, we all want a lot of the same things:
mhm,
prosperity, health, happiness. You've got 2 daughters. I can imagine how you feel about those daughters is probably pretty damn similar to how I feel about my boys. Same thing with your wife or your
mhm.
partner. Um, like we're so similar to one another. And so I think where we start to lose each other in society is once you get past those basic values or whatnot, whether they're 5 or 10, and you start to then look at those next ones that are not as important as those core ones, there are differences. But the
Mhm.
basics of all of humanity across religion and whatnot, they're the same. And I think sometimes we just lose sight of that. And yeah, my hope for everybody would be is to realize that we are far more alike than we are different. And I think if we could
Yes,
do that, my interactions with you, whether I knew you or not, would be very different because, to your point, I would treat you the way I'd want to be treated, knowing you're a father of two and a husband and somebody that cares and wants to be seen and all that good stuff. And so I just think we lose a little bit of sight of that. So that's why it was very similar to
absolutely.
what you said, just in slightly different words.
Yeah.
Yeah. Randy, this was so fun. You brought some new stuff to this, which I love. I'm always so excited to talk to people and really start to get to know them better. Where can somebody go to learn a little bit more about you? Where would be the right place to send them?
I love your enthusiasm, Chris. It is always fun to chat with you, just from when you reached out to me about a year and a half ago, was it? I always admired how deep you have gone into the world of just trying to live better, make other people's lives better. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you. Just wanted to say that
Yeah, thank you.
before giving my information. I have a website, randyspelling.com, and I'm really active on social, which is Randy Spelling on Instagram. And yeah. And I have a podcast called Oldish. It's for iHeartRadio, but you can listen to it anywhere that you listen to podcasts.
Awesome. Well, we will make sure to include all of that in the show notes. Randy, thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Chris. Anytime.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Standard. Before we go, click on the link in the show notes of this episode to learn more about today's guest. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with somebody who you think would benefit from it as well.